Okay, so today's tutorial is on converting between units of measure. We're going to be covering entry level 3, level 1 and level 2. So you'll notice as I've created this presentation, we create them live every single week. So this is what I've been working on this week, for example. It'll start off slightly more basic and then I'll move on to some level 1 questions and then some level 2 questions. So I'll try and point out the difference between them as we're going through as well. So the aim of today is to be able to convert metric and imperial units of length, weight and capacity. So we are going to be looking at both metric and imperial units. Does anybody know the year that metric came in the UK? I'll let you ponder that one and add your answer in a chat whenever you're ready. The objective for today is by the end of the session, you'll be able to convert between units of measure relating to length, weight and capacity, including both metric and imperial units. So we're going to look at different units of measure. We're going to be looking at length first, then weight, and then capacity. And we're going to look at some metric units first, then I'll introduce imperial. At entry level 3, you will be just looking at metric units, but level 1 and level 2, you'll be looking at imperial units as well. So let's get started. Length first. So the metric units for length are millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. And hopefully you all recognise the shortened versions of those: millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. This you will need to memorize. So this is metric units for length. You will need to know each of these. So you'll need to know that there's 10 millimeters in a centimeter, there are 100 centimeters in a meter, and there are 1,000 meters in a kilometer. Kilo means thousand. That's the easiest way to remember that. I'm going to try and keep reiterating that as well, because I think kilometre is the one in length that I see come up more often, where people have some issues with that. So when we're converting between units of measure, I found this image, and there's quite a few available, but I thought this one explained it a little better than some of the other diagrams. So if we're going from a bigger unit, like kilometre, down to meters, then centimeters, then millimeters, we need to multiply. We need to multiply by however many there are of that unit to the next one. So if we're going from kilometers to meters, we would multiply by 1,000. It's kind of the opposite to what you'd think, because we're going from a larger unit to a smaller unit of measure. But because if you imagine that number actually gets bigger, the smaller the unit goes. This is why we multiply. So we multiply from kilometers to meters. There are 1,000 meters in a kilometer, 1,000 meters in a kilometer, 100 centimeters in a meter, and 10 millimeters in a centimeter. If we need to go from a smaller unit to a larger unit, we would then divide, which again seems like the opposite to what you would do. But again, the number that length represents is going to be represented in a smaller number. So however many millimeters there are is going to be a much smaller number, amount of numbers there for kilometers. So we're going to be looking at a couple of practice questions first, and I've done this for each section. So I've left the gauge there at the top, and we've got a couple of questions to answer, to have a go at by using the gauge that the image we have at the top there. Somebody just joined us. Oh, hello, Georgie. Hello, Chloe. Nice to see you both, as always. That's okay. Don't worry at all. So I'll just recap. We're just looking at units of measure for length at the moment. We're looking at millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. So should we have a go at answering these questions? Hopefully you've all got pen and paper ready, as always. How many meters are there in 2 kilometers? Would anybody like to hazard a guess? So let's look at the image at the top. If we need to go from meters to kilometers, sorry, kilometers to meters. Going from kilometers to meters. So 2 kilometers is how many meters? Perfect. 2,000 meters. Now, some people struggle. Like I said, kilo is the thing that some people really do struggle with. But if you see 2 kilometers written and it asks you how many meters, that literally means 2,000 meters. 2K for 1,000. Imagine talking money. 2K is 2,000. 2,000 meters. So we can use our conversion. We can go from kilometers to meters. by multiplying by 1,000, or we could read it like this, 2,000 meters. So how many centimeters in 3.2 meters? So we're going from meters to centimeters this time. So if we go from meters to centimeters, how many centimeters in 3.2 meters? Well done. So remember, there is a non-calculator paper and a calculator allowed paper in your exam. So it's always worth practicing everything without a calculator as well. Let's not rely on the calculator like we do day to day. So we've got 3.2 meters. And we're going from meters to centimeters. We're going to multiply by 1,000. Sorry, by 100. So we go 1 for 10, 2 for 100. We'd move the decimal point from 3.2 over here. Sorry, I haven't written that very well. 3.2. It will jump 10, 100. It will come over here, fill that space in. We end up with 320 centimeters. How many kilometers in 6,500 meters? So we're going from meters to kilometers. So we're going from a smaller measure, meters, to kilometers, which is a bigger measure. There's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So 6,500 meters turns into, that's it, 6.5. Well done, everyone. Are we okay with that? As I mentioned, this is something you will need to revise and you will need to remember. You will not be given the conversion or any hints on how to convert between these metric units in your exam. So it is important to get that. We're going to do a bit more practice now. So what we've got now is more of a, so these questions here were more entry level 3. We're now moving on to a level 1 style question. Georgia just said she's really worried about remembering the conversions. There's a couple of things we could do to do that. Obviously, practice is really important. I remember revising for certain maths exams and having to remember certain things. And there's a few things that I did to help me remember. I used to put a poster on the wall in my house with some conversions in it. For example, if it was conversions, just so I'd sort of walk past it quite often, you kind of subtly see it all the time. There's even the age-old sort of recording yourself and having it play over and over again, even when you're falling asleep. So it kind of just sinks in without sort of even realizing it. But practice is definitely the best thing to help you remember those. I've got a link as well. No problem. I've got a link as well in the handout section. It's worth mentioning to BBC Bite-Size Converting Between Units and also a self-study task for the end of the session as well. So obviously there's lots of practice there as well for you, for everybody to do. So as I said, this is more of a level 1 question. So the famous youth sprinter Jay Jolt was able to run 9,400 centimetres in just over 9 seconds. How many metres is this? Anybody want to have a go at doing that? Well done. So going from centimetres to metres. I'll just give everybody a few more seconds. So we need to divide by 100. A couple of ways of doing this. So if we've got the decimal place at the moment is here. So if we're going to divide by 100, we'd move it once for 10, twice for 100, and your decimal place will end up here to make 94. Or 9,400 divided by 100, we could literally just drop those 2 zeros. That's the same as divided by 100. So you end up with the answer of 94 meters. Was everybody okay with that? Any questions? Okay, so that was a level 1 question. Now, as I mentioned, level 1 and level 2, you're looking at both metric and imperial units of measure. In level 1, if you are given imperial units to work out, you will only be asked to work between imperial units. So here's a list, as you can see on the screen. You've got metric units on the left at the top and some imperial units on the right. So we've got foot, yard, and mile. They're all imperial units. So we know that in metric, 10 millimeters equals a centimeter, 100 centimeters in a meter, and 1,000 meters in a kilometer, because kilo means thousand. There are 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, and 1,760 yards in a mile. You won't be asked or expected to memorize imperial units. If you need to work with imperial, you will be given these conversions there to be able to work on. At level 1, you would only ever be asked to work within the same type of unit. So if you were given imperial units, you would only be asked to convert between imperial units, so inches to feet or feet to yards, for example. At level 2, you could be asked to go between metric and imperial units, and that's the difference between level 1 and level 2. Some metric units don't equal to imperial units exactly. So you can see at the bottom, we've got approximate conversion factors between imperial and metric units. So in metric units, 2.5 centimeters is about an inch. It's not equal. You can check a ruler, it's not exact. 30 centimeters is about a foot, a meter is about a yard, and 8 kilometers is about 5 miles. But as I said, if you're given any imperial units to work on, it will give you that conversion there. So it will say if 12 inches equals 1 foot, then how many inches is 10 feet, for example. So what I've got next is a couple of examples of that. So these are from BKSB. So again, helping you to understand the learning element particularly. But this is where we can actually take into account what we've learned on scale for the last 2 weeks. So we're going to be able to scale up and down using these conversions that we're given. So Georgia runs 32 kilometres every week. How far does she run in miles? So we're going miles to kilometres. So we're looking at imperial to metric. So this is an example of what you could get at level 2. And it says use 5 miles to 8 kilometres. So if you want, obviously, if you can use the knowledge that we've gained for the last 2 weeks, you can have a go. I'm going to go through these with you as well. Anybody have any? Oh, Georgie. You've made me so proud. She's on it, got it. Let's go through this. Well done, Georgie. So if 5 miles, and hopefully everybody's seen, attended or have seen the scale tutorials already. If you haven't, let me know and I'll send you them because it would really help you to understand this as well. If 5 miles equals 8 kilometres, and Georgia runs 32 kilometres every week, how far does she run in miles? So when we looked at scale the last 2 weeks, we're looking at, we're finding out the rule for scale, and then we're figuring out by how much we need to go up and down by. This is just the same. And I mentioned using that method that we learned over the last 2 weeks, you can use it to convert anything at all. So again, here we've been given a rule of 5 miles is equal to 8 kilometres. So let's apply what we know. We know that she runs 32 kilometres. So by how much have we increased the kilometre side by? How many 8s in 32? 4. Well done, Chloe. Thank you. So we've increased the kilometre side by 4. So we're going to do exactly the same to the miles. So we're going to do our miles and multiply that by 4 as well. So 5 times 4, equals 20 miles. So do you see that method that we've been using for the last couple of weeks? So we can now apply it to convert between the units as well. Well done. Everyone okay with that? Should we have a look at the next one? Slightly different again. Charlie is 5 feet 10 inches tall. What is his height in meters? So use 1 foot equals 30 centimeters, 1 inch equals 2.5 centimeters. We'd have to look at this one slightly differently again, because we've actually got two conversions we need to do. If Charlie is 5 feet, and obviously if you want to, please feel free to have a go at this one, but I will go through it as well. And 10 inches. We know that 1 foot is equal to 30 centimetres and 1 inch is equal to 2.5 centimetres. So we're going to have to split them up into between feet and inches. So if 1 foot is equal to 30 centimetres, let's look at the feet first. Okay, he's 5 feet tall. So we'd need to see by how much we've increased the feet side. That's increased 5-fold, 5 times. And we do exactly the same to this side as well. So we're keeping to this scale. Our scale here is 1 foot to 30 centimetres. So 30 times 5, somebody got it. Well done, Nikki. 30 times 5 gives us 150 centimetres. So our 5 feet, we now know, is 150 centimetres. Now we need to do just the same with the inches as well. So if we know that 1 inch, I'm hoping you can still see this, yeah. 1 inch is equal to 2.5 centimetres. And he is 10 inches. We've increased the inch side by 10-fold, 10 times bigger. So we do just the same this side. Go 10 times bigger. Okay, so that'll give us 25 centimetres. So in centimetres now, he is 150, which is our 5 feet, and 25, which is our 10 inches. So he's 175 centimetres. If there are 100 centimetres in a metre, then we need to divide that by 100 to get our answer in metres. So the answer is 1.75 metres. What does everybody think to that one? Please ask if you're not sure or if you have any questions at all. Yeah, thumbs up from Kim. That's always good. Understood. He wants a bit at the end was talked through. That's fine. Not a problem at all. This is a level 2 question. As long as it's kind of clear at the end, the aim obviously is if you had a question like this, you would understand how to approach it. So it's important that you understand that when you get the scale, so this equals this, so this amount is equal to this amount, then we can use this method again that we've been practicing for the last couple of weeks to apply what we know, then figure out by how much we've increased or decreased from the original scale to keep everything within the same scale. Okay. And then obviously at the end, we had a conversion when we had to go from centimetres to metres then as well. So this is just what we talked about last week, being able to do the actual converting from the scale, but then making sure we had the answer in the right unit as well. It's tricky. So if everybody's okay with that, should we look at weight now? Yeah? Again, just let me know if you're not sure on anything at all. So the metric units for weights: grams, kilograms, and ton. What does kilo mean? Everybody pop an answer in the text chat box. What does kilo mean? Wonderful. Kilo means 1,000. Yeah, exactly. So kilo, you can guess how many grams are in a kilogram, and ton we have as well. So we're going to look at grams to kilograms first. So because we know kilo means 1,000, then 1 kilogram must equal 1,000 grams. 1 K for 1,000, G for grams, 1,000 grams. So to convert from one unit to another, if we're going from grams to kilograms, we're going from a smaller measure to a larger one. So we divide, and as there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram, we divide by 1,000. We're going from kilograms to grams. We're going from a larger unit of measure to a smaller one. So we're going to end up with a larger number at the end that represents the same amount, the same weight. We multiply by 1,000. How many grams are there in 12 kilograms? Do you write it again? 12 kg. How many grams are there in 12 kilograms? $12,000 grams, exactly. Because this means 12,000 grams. But again, if you're not sure, we can always do our conversion. If there's 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram, and we've got 12 kilograms, we've increased our kilograms by 12-fold. So we increase our grams by the same amount to end up with 12,000 grams. Okay. How many kilograms in 4,500 grams? Thanks, Nikki. Well done. Fidelia, well done. Thank you, Chloe, Josh, Lima. Again, if we're not sure, we know that there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram. So we could take our decimal place, which at the moment is here at the end, or we could divide by 10, 100, and 1,000. We move it over here to end it with 4.5. We could divide it by applying it to the rule that we know. So if there's 1,000 grams, 1 kilogram, and we've got 4,500 grams. We've increased our grams by 4.5 times, because 4,500 is 4.5 times 1,000. So we do exactly the same this side. Times it by 4.5 times. So 1 times 4.5 equals 4.5 kilograms. Thank you, Kim. Georgie, you okay with that one? Let's have a look. Level 1 question now. So we started, that was entry level 3 on that last page. So this is a level 1 example. Tom goes on a diet. He loses 3.2 kilograms over a month. How many grams did he lose? Anybody want to have a guess or an answer? Well done. Oh, look at all them. Wow. Really impressed, guys. Well done. Yeah, 3,200 grams. So we could take our, just in case anybody isn't sure, we could take our 3.2 kilograms. We would move it, the decimal place, 3 times this way. We'd fill in that in, and we'd end up with 3,200 grams. I think we're getting it, aren't we? I'm really impressed. Let's have a look at the next one. We've got some imperial units now. What a waste of paper that was. So our metric units, we've got grams, kilograms, tons. Imperial units for weight. We've got ounces, pounds, and stones. So metric units came into the UK in 1965, and unbelievably, we're still using imperial for a lot of things. So as you know, metric is what we should be using, but imperial is still there, it's still around. So as you know, when we weigh ourselves generally, particularly if you're from the UK, I've never, I've no idea how much I weigh in kilograms, for example. I would use pounds and stones, and when children are born, we use pounds and ounces and things like that. Um, so it is still very commonly used. Yeah, there you go, Georgie. So you know this imperial one because you can sort of relate it to you a little more. So I know there's 14 pounds in a stone because that's very much, um, well, it's common knowledge if you know that. Yeah, perfect. So maybe you could try and apply the units of length to something in real life as well, because obviously functional skills is true to real life. So we should be able to apply everything that we're doing to a real life situation. It's a lot easier with the imperial units. With measure, obviously, we still also measure our height in feet and inches as well. But obviously, we would never really measure. If I measured the height of a door, I would measure it in meters and centimeters. But that's still it's a similar height. So why would I not use, feet and inches? But it depends what you're used to, I think. So again, we're looking at metric and imperial units. There is approximate conversion factors between imperial and metric when we're looking at weight. So 25 grams is about 1 ounce and 1 kilo is about 2.2 pounds. So 1,000 grams is about 2.2 pounds. So again, at level 1, I'll reiterate, if you were given imperial units, you'd be looking at converting between imperial units. So it would be pounds to stone, for example. At level 2, you might have to go between, for example, grams to ounces or kilograms to pounds. So you would be looking at different units of weight in that sense as well. But you need to know the metric ones. You would be given the imperial units in your exam, so you wouldn't need to memorize them. So let's practice this level 2 questions then. A large chicken weighs 2.5 kilos or kilograms. Sorry, how many pounds is this? So we're looking at pounds in imperial, kilograms in metric. So use 2.2 pounds to 1 kilogram. So how many pounds is 2.5 kilograms? I'll just set it up while you're having a go. Well done. Are we all using this scaling up sort of way of doing it? There are other ways as well, but we've been focusing on this because obviously it's a different way to what maybe BKSB shows you as well. Does anybody use this method? Are you finding it useful at all? Yeah, perfect. Is it the method that you're confused with, Georgie, or this question? Sorry. Don't apologise. Yeah, that's okay. Let's go through the question then. So we have our rule there. We have what a colleague of mine used to joke because I really like using this method all the time. It's a golden rule. So 2.2 pounds is equal to 1 kilogram. So if a large chicken weighs 2.5 kilograms, how many pounds is this? So let's apply what we know. This is our rule. We know that the chicken weighs 2.5 kilograms. So in pounds, we need to figure out how much that is. We've increased our kilogram side by 2.5 times because 1 times 2.5 gets you to 2.5. Okay, so do exactly the same to this side. 2.2 times 2.5. Did you all get 5.5? Yeah, 5.5 pounds. So the large chicken weighs 5.5 pounds in pounds. So the next question, if she needs 400 grams of margarine, whoever she is, sorry, for one cake, will she have enough margarine to make 6 cakes from 2 kilograms? It's a yes or no answer. So this is, again, I've chosen this one because it asks you the question in a slightly different way. It hasn't given you the rule in such an obvious way like that one at the top did. So if somebody needs 400 grams of margarine for one cake, will she have enough margarine to make 6 cakes from 2 kilograms? Well done, Nikki. You're really good at this, I can tell. You've got this, definitely. Well done, Joshua. Let me set it up just while everybody's having a go themselves as well. Does that help at all? So 400 grams equals one cake. Will she have enough margarine to make 6 cakes with 2 kilograms? So we know that she's trying to make 6 cakes. So we need to figure out how many grams of margarine she's going to be using, don't we? We know that 2 kilograms, because kilo means 1,000, will be 2,000 grams. Well done, everyone. You're doing really well with this. So she's going to make 6 cakes. If it takes 400 grams of margarine to make one cake, we need to figure out how many grams of margarine it will take to make 6 cakes. So we've increased the amount of cakes we have sixfold by 6 times. Going from 1 to 6 is a 6 times bigger. So we'll do exactly the same to this side. It's 6 times bigger. Are we following? So 6 times 400 will give you 2,400 grams. They have, or she has, 2 kilograms, which we know is equal to 2,000 grams. She needs 2,400 grams. She has 2,000 grams. So, no, she doesn't have enough. Well done. Did everybody see that? That's a slightly different way of reading a question like this, but the rule is there. You've just got to be able to see it sometimes. So as I said, the question on the top gave you the rule. 2.2 pounds is equal to 1 kilogram. But the next question didn't, but the rule is in there. You just got to see it. So 400 grams is equal to 1 cake. She wants 6 cakes. So we need to increase the amount that it takes to make 1 cake by 6-fold, 6 times. Okay. Any questions on that? Are you okay? Georgie, did that help at all? Just let me know if not, because I can go through anything again. Sort of. Well, I'll send you the recording at the end as always, so you can go through it. It's not a problem. This is level 2, this question here. You can go through the session again in your own time, at your own pace, and obviously we can have a one-to-one on this by all means. It's not a problem at all. You know that's what I'm here for, so just let me know. Okay, should we move on to capacity? I think you can tell what's coming, can't you now? So capacity is the amount something will hold. You'll see it in volume as well. So liquid is measured in millimeters, centiliters, and liters, and these are all metric units. Now capacity, I must admit, isn't my favourite of the 3 units of measure that we're looking at today. It's not something that I think we use as often as we would do with length and weight. We don't look at the capacity of something in day-to-day life. No, Nick is saying no. So we don't look at capacity in everyday, day-to-day life like we do length and weight. So it might take a little longer to actually understand this version. And I've even kept the conversions up at the top, and we're going to look at some practice questions as well. So we're going to look at converting between one another. To convert from one unit to another, you multiply or divide by 10 or 100, as we know. So we're looking at milliliters, centiliters, and liters. So there are 100 milliliters in a litre, because milli is Latin for 100. 1,000, sorry. And as I was saying that, I was thinking that's wrong. Look at it on the screen, Jen. There are 1,000 milliliters in a litre, and you can tell that because if you go from milliliters to centiliters to litres, you go, you divide by 10 and divide by 100. So altogether, you divide it by 1,000. Right, there are 1,000 milliliters in a litre because milliliter or milli is Latin for 1,000. There are 100 centiliters in a litre because centi is Latin for 100. There are 10 milliliters in 1 centilitre and 100 centilitres in a litre. Now, this is something that we're going to have to look at a little more, I think. And it is one of the units that we probably would have to practice and probably spend a little more time on revising and remembering these conversions as well. So this one goes from milliliters to centiliters to litres, as you know. So a milliliter to a centiliter we divide by 10, centiliter to a litre you divide by 100, and vice versa. So litres to centiliters we times by 100, because there's 100 centiliters in a litre. Centiliters to milliliters we times by 10. So it's worth it, maybe just those tips that I mentioned earlier. You might want to print something off like this so you can see it and try and memorize how many are in each. But again, if you can remember little snippets like milli meaning 1,000 or centi meaning 100, like cent, if you think of cents as in dollars, there's 100 cents in a dollar. So cent, you could remember it as 100 in that way, maybe. It depends what works for you. To convert between milliliters to liters, we multiply or divide by 1,000. So if you want to skip the centiliters in the middle, we go from milliliters to liters, which I think I'd recognise more. I think you'd probably find the same. You recognise milliliters and liters more than centiliters. There's 1,000 milliliters in a litre. So obviously we divide by 1,000 to go from milliliters to liters, and we would multiply by 1,000 to go from the larger unit of litre down to the smaller unit of milliliter. So as I mentioned, I'm going to keep the conversion up at the top there when we answer some of these questions. So looking at the conversions then here, how many litres are there in 450 millilitres? Anybody want to have a guess or a go? Perfect. Well done, everyone. Yeah. It was important to include a decimal here as well, I felt, because obviously if we're going from something like millilitres where you can get, 450 millilitres is quite an average weight of capacity. So millilitres to litres, we would divide by 1,000. So we'd end up with, if we take our decimal place and divide by 1,000, we divide by 10, 100, 1,000. Our decimal place point will end up here to get 0.45, so 0.45 litres. What is 80 centilitres in millilitres? Yeah, slightly nicer on that one. So to go from centilitres to millilitres, we would multiply by 10. So 80 times 10 gives us 800. Okay, so there's your entry level 3 questions. Here's a level 1 example. So again, I've left that conversion up at the top because I think it's something we are going to probably need to memorise and work on a little more. So studies show that the average person in the UK drinks at least 3 cups of tea per day. I can definitely verify for that. That was in the last hour. That is 900 millilitres. So how many centilitres is it? So studies show that the average person in the UK drinks at least 3 cups of tea per day. That's 900 millilitres. How many centilitres is this? Yeah, well done everyone. So millilitres to centilitres. We divide by 10, so we could just knock that 0 off to get 90, or we could move the decimal point from there over to here to still get 90. So there's 90 centilitres in 900 mils. So just like before, we're going to look at some metric and imperial units. Imperial units for capacity include pints and gallons. And again, we use pints and gallons just as much as we use litres and millilitres, I think. Not that I do that much cooking, but I still recognise them as units of measure that we use quite often. So there's 20 fluid ounces in 1 pint and 8 pints in 1 gallon. And if we're going from, again, if you look at the top one, particularly if you're doing level 1, you'd be sticking with the same type of unit. If you're given an imperial unit, you will have to convert between imperial to imperial, if that makes sense. So you might be given a question as, 20 fluid ounces equals 1 pint. So how many fluid ounces is 5 pints? But if you were doing level 2, we'd have to use the approximate conversion factors between imperial and metric units. So 1 litre is about 1 3/4 pints, and 4.5 litres is about a gallon. But you can, like I said, at level 2, be asked to go between metric and imperial. So you might be given, if 1 litre equals 1 3/4 pints, then how many pints is 12 litres, for example? Okay. So let's have a look at these. We've got, these are level 2 questions. We have the scale given there as well. So recipe says that you'll need 1 3/4 of a pint of stock. Approximately how many fluid ounces is this? On your page. So that chat came up. I thought this is going to be Nikki with the answer. You're really, really good at this, Nikki. Well done. 20 fluid ounces. We have 1 3/4 pints. So can anybody tell me what 3/4 is as a decimal? Chloe? Perfect. Yeah, 3/4 as a decimal is 0.75, and Chloe rightly pointed out that 1 3/4 would be 1.75. Well done, Chloe. Well done, everybody else as well. So I always mention how important it is to know your multiplication tables and how important it is to know and to be able to jump between fractions, decimals, and percentages. It's really important that you know that 3/4 is 0.75 as a decimal or 75% as a fraction, a percentage. So when you've got a question like this and you're given an amount in a fraction, which we don't prefer, as we know, we don't prefer them as much as decimals and percentages. It's important that you can then make it or turn it into a decimal so that you can then apply it and use actual numbers as opposed to proportions like fractions. So we've got 1.75 pints. So we've increased our pints. So his pen's not very good. By 1.75 times bigger because we've gone from 1 to 1.75. So 1 times 1.75 will give you 1.75 pints. So we're going to do exactly the same to this side. So 20 times 1.75 is 35. Fluid. So it is 35 fluid ounces. Georgie, were you okay with that? I've just seen your chat about the 3/4 bits. Yeah? Fabulous. Do you see how we looked at fractions? We did 2 or 3 weeks on fractions, didn't we? And understanding that 3/4 as a fraction, as a decimal, sorry, is 0.75 because it's out of one whole as a decimal, or 75% as a percentage because that is out of 100. So 1 3/4 is the same as 1.75. So we end up with 35 fluid ounces there. So let's look at the last question. This is the last question for today as well. Reese drinks. You do the same. Sorry, you do the same at the other side. I was just thinking. Yeah, absolutely. So we recognised that the 0.75 was your 3/4 bit. So 1 3/4 is going to be 1.75 pints. Is that okay? So Reese drinks 1 pint of milk a day. Slightly different question again here because we're going to be applying a bit more. He buys milk in 2-litre containers. How many containers does he need for a week? No problem, Georgie. So if we use 1 3/4 pints equals 1 litre, we already know that 1 3/4 is the same as 1.75. So let's stick with what we prefer. So 1.75 pints is equal to 1 litre. There's our rule. Has everybody got an answer? We must remember here, thank you, Halima. We must remember here that it asks how many containers is needed for a week. So Reese drinks 1 pint of milk a day. He buys milk in 2-litre containers. Let's let everybody have a go. So the first line of this question is the important element here. Reese drinks 1 pint of milk a day. How many containers does he need for a week? So how many pints does he drink in a week? Anybody tell me? If he drinks 1 pint of milk a day, there's 7 days in a week. Well done, Georgie. So in a week, he drinks 7 pints. Okay. So it's really important to get that part of the question there. So if he drinks 1 pint of milk a day and he buys milk in 2-litre containers, how many containers does he need for a week? So if he drinks 1 pint of milk a day, he must drink 7 pints of milk a week. So let's add our 7 pints here. If we go from 1.75 to 7, if we're not sure how to do that, you would divide 7 by 1.75. So remember going backwards. So we're looking at by how many times we've increased 1.75 by to get to 7. So we're multiplying 1.75 by something. To find that out, we'd reverse the calculation by doing 7 divided by 1.75. It is 4 times bigger. So we'll make this side 4 times bigger as well, which means he drinks 4 litres a week. So if he buys milk in 2-litre containers, how many containers will he need? 2. Perfect. I've probably left the trickiest question to the very last page here because it does have a slight, you have to think about it logically a little bit. So if he drinks 1 pint of milk a day and he buys milk in 2-litre containers, How many containers does he need for a week? We need to know how many pints he drinks in a week. So if he drinks 1 pint a day, then it'll be 7 pints a week. So once we know how many pints he drinks in a week, we can then convert that into litres, then find out how many litres he needs if the milk comes in 2-litre containers. Yeah, you can use whatever method you find suitable to do that division. Question like this, you're probably going to get on a calculator paper anyway. So I would, you get a question like that, it's going to be a calculator paper, I would hope. So is everybody happy with 2 containers there? Please let me know. I've lost Kim from the 7 pints. That's okay. I could lose anybody after 7 pints. So if Reese drinks 1 pint of milk a day, okay, he buys milk in 2-litre containers. So each of these containers is 2 litres. How many containers does he need for a week? Okay, our scale is 1 3/4 pints is equal to 1 litre. So we need to know how many pints he drinks in the week. If he drinks 1 pint of milk per day, they're not going to necessarily tell you that he drinks 7 pints in a week, because it's very common knowledge, obviously, that there are 7 days in a week. So this is where we have to use a little bit of logic to apply to the question. So if he drinks 1 pint of milk a day, how many pints does he drink in a week? That would be 7 pints, because 1 times 7 gives you 7 pints in a week. Okay. Then once we know how many pints he drinks, we can convert that into litres using the scale that we have. 1.7 pints is equal to 1 litre. You wouldn't multiply by 1.75 on each side. What you're doing, because we know that this 1.7 here, 1.75, sorry, is our rule, because we've been told that the scale between pints to litres is 1 3/4 pints is equal to 1 litre, which is here. So 1 3/4, we've got 1.75 as a decimal number. Now we know that he drinks 7 pints in a week. So what we have to do is figure out by how many more times we're going to scale up the amount of pints he drinks from the rule that we have. So if we're going from 1.75 to 7 pints, we would multiply, we're going 4 times bigger the amount of pints. To stick with that scale, because with scale, we scale everything up to the same amount. We'd do exactly the same to this side as well. We'd multiply this side by 4. Now, as I mentioned, if you're not sure how to get from 1.75 to 7, what we're looking at is a number that you multiply 1.75 by to get to 7. If we're not sure, we could reverse that by doing 7 divided by 1.75, which will tell us that 1.75 goes into 7 4 times. Okay, so if 7 divided by 1.75 is 4, then 1.75 times 4 is 7. So we then know that his 7 pints is equal to 4 litres. And if he buys milk in 2-litre containers and he needs 4 litres, he's going to need 2 containers for the week. Is that okay, Chloe? I would. Chloe just said, so it's best to write the equation out that they give you to help put down the arrow method. Absolutely. It's important to be able to either pick out the rule or to write the rule down. This is what I would do. But to be honest, if you're in the centre doing your course before lockdown, if you walked in and didn't have a pen and paper, they're ready to do some sketching, drawing, doodling, whatever would help you to understand this question. You've got to be able to take that question that's on the screen and answer it using whatever method is right for you. If you want to draw pictures of pints of milk, it doesn't matter. It's whatever works for you. For me, I would write down that scale that I'm given, the 1 3/4 pints equals 1 litre. Then I would use the method to then increase both sides like that. Use your pen and paper, sketch as much as you can. In your exam, you will be given pen, pencil, paper, ruler to do as many workings out as you need to. And I think the more that you do, the better. You have to be able to apply what you see on screen and then be able to answer it. So whatever you do on that paper is up to you. But I would suggest writing it down, yeah. Chloe just has to do your workings out, get marks. So you would need to, in some questions in your non-calculator paper, for example, the 1 mark each, you get a mark whether the question is right or wrong. So in your non-calculator paper, you don't get any marks for workings out. If there's 1 mark available, that 1 mark will be for the correct answer only. In your calculator allowed paper, however, you will be given space to do some calculations on the screen. I would advise showing as many of your workings out as you possibly can. So every step by step, because if an answer is worth, say, 5 marks, you could get so far in the process and then maybe make a mistake and not quite get to the end correct answer. But you can still gain 2 or 3 marks in your process if you show your workings out as you're going down. You can even get marks for an incorrect answer if everything you've done is in the right way. You've done everything right, you just somehow ended up with the wrong answer. So write down as much as you can on paper, but obviously in some questions where it says show your working on the screen. So if you could practice and write it all out on the screen, great. But if you just write that out and then show how you've increased that, I would as well. Can you work on scrap paper on the table and then show clearer working out? Yes, exactly. George has worded that actually really well. She said, can you work out on scrap paper on the table and then show clearer working out on the screen? That's exactly what you would do. So imagine your piece of paper on the screen is kind of like your brain processing the actual equation or the sum that you're doing, and then show how you got there clearly on the screen. Let your paper be your crazy workings out, but then show exactly how you got there on the screen itself. Okay.